Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Law Excellence. Today we are going to deal with Sociology Paper 2 2025. And if you observe Sociology Paper 2 2025 and the both Paper 1 and Paper 2, and if you look at the questions, the nature of questions, 75% of the paper is static. 75% of the paper is static, except section B of paper 2. All sections, that means in paper 1, section A, section B, paper 2, section A are static and directly from the syllabus concepts, and nothing out of the syllabus, and most of the questions are based upon the previous year trends. So we can assume that sociology, 75% of the sociology papers in the last 10 to 15 years are static in nature. 25% of the paper is generally dynamic in nature, contrary to the perceptions in a civil services aspirant circle. There is a myth and the misconception about sociology that most of the questions are dynamic, and I have heard from a lot of students that basically sociology has no limitations and you have to write so much description and there is no static part. And here is a trick that, so unlike the aspirants' understanding, in which they think that everything or all sociologists are part of our syllabus, that is wrong. We have the major thinkers in sociology, and there are certain minor thinkers for each chapter, and these thinkers are primary for our syllabus, and other than these thinkers, the remaining thinkers are just commentators in the answers. So you no need to prepare all the thinkers or all the sociology are taking every notes available in the market, are taking all the sociology books to read, etc., is not a right way of preparation. So my point here is that there should be strict boundaries when you prepare, and way to concentrate and how to stress on particular concepts has to be understood by all sociology aspirants. Here, even if there are any certain dynamic questions, and these dynamism is not like, and you cannot approachable or you cannot write these answers, to avoid the fear of writing a general studies answers, you have a trick that you have to limit yourself to the perspectives and you approach the dynamic question from sociological perspectives. So what are those sociological perspectives you have to understand, and you know that there are structural functionalists in sociology and functionalists in sociology, and there is only subtle difference between functionalists and structural functionalists, and there are conflict perspective, and there is a conflict perspective in the sociology. The major propounder of this conflict perspective is Karl Marx, and we have feminist perspective, and within the feminism there are liberal feminists, and there are radical feminists, and symbolic interactionists, postmodernists, and apart from that, there is a new perspective emerged in this sociology, that is intersectionality. And looking from all these perspectives and connecting the syllabus topics, that means a sociology is basically about a studying of social processes, social institutions, social units, social groups, and the relationships or social relationships in the society. So it means basically you have to talk about any dynamic question from the different perspectives using social processes, social units, social institutions, social groups, and social relationships. So if you translate it into syllabus topics, it is just that you have to think from contradiction and cooperative perspective, and the caste dimension, class dimension, political dimension, that is power is a major a process in the society, or a major, the tool are used in the society, and the family as an institution, religion as an institution, and education is a process, employment and economic perspectives. So using the syllabus topics when and for analyzing a particular dynamic question is the key in writing dynamic answers. And it's just 25% of the paper is dynamic, and that 25% of the dynamic questions can be handled with understanding of the perspectives and linking with the sociology as a subject, that is the sociological answer. It automatically becomes sociological answer if you think from the process, institutions, units, the groups, and the relationships perspective. So I hope you understand the how you can attempt or how you can write the dynamics or sociological dynamics or the dynamic concepts in the sociology, and that is just limited to 25% of the paper. And just the paper 2 section A is always limited to part A and part B of paper 2 syllabus. Section A, I have analyzed last 15 to 20 years papers. Mostly, that is 90% of the section A of the paper 2 is generally coming from part A and part B of the paper 2 syllabus. That is Introduction to the Indian Society, that is Perspectives on the Indian Society by G.S. Guri, M.N. Srinivas, A.R. Desai, and Colonial Impact on the Indian Society, that is part A. And part B is about social structure of the India, which talks about rural and agrarian structure, caste system, social classes in India, religion and society in India, systems of kinship in India. These are the chapters covered under social structure, which also includes tribal communities in India. And from this part A and part B, basically, which talks about structure of the Indian society and the perspectives on the Indian society. So more than 90% of the section A of the paper 2 is coming from part A and part B of the paper 2 syllabus. And the third, that is section B of the paper 2 is generally from the part C of the syllabus of paper 2. That part C is basically the dynamism or dynamic concepts, that is social change in Indian society. So it is generally talking about social change in Indian society, means most of the questions are dynamic in nature in part B of the paper 2. So it translates to just 25% of the paper that which is dynamic in nature, and 75% of the papers, 75% of the sociology is static in nature. And the precondition here is to just keep in mind that you have to have boundaries to write the answers, and you have to have boundaries for your right preparation. So that is the only precondition here. Okay, so I hope you understand the essence, and you understand the importance of this strategy of this preparation. And let's we go into that discussion of these questions. So the first question The first question: the textual perspective is important in understanding of Indian social system. Discuss. So it is sometimes a little, I mean, you feel that something it is difficult question, but it is not a difficult question. It is directly from Indology or G.S. Gurye's understanding of the Indian society. G.S. Gurye applied textual perspective. This is also called as a book view or Indological perspective. That means understanding a Indian social system through the texts or the books, like you can use the Vedas, Dharma Shastras and the Puranas, or historical texts by historians. So using all these historical texts and texts for understanding of a social system. So what is Indian social system here means, for understanding of village, understanding of caste, understanding of the culture of the Indian society, understanding of the position of women in Indian society, understanding of the tribal situation in the Indian society, understanding of economic system in the Indian society, understanding of the power dimensions in the Indian society. So social system of the Indian society is generally talking about the village, the caste, the classes, the women, the tribal position in the Indian society. So this is what using the texts like historical texts and the text, a textual interpretation of the Indian social system is called textual perspective. It is generally talking about G.S. Gurye's book view. Okay, and next, justify that the Indian traditions are modernizing. Also discuss its contributing factors. So this is directly from the modernization of Indian traditions concept by Yogendra Singh. Justify the Indian traditions are modernizing. It is directly from the Yogendra Singh's modernization of Indian traditions. The Indian traditions are modernizing, and also discuss its contributory factors means the Indian traditions are modernizing. So what are the Indian traditions here? That you have to understand. So Indian traditions, be it a caste system, Indian traditions, be it in a cultural terms, Indian traditions of the women or the issues related to women in the Indian traditions, the Indian traditions which are transferred from generation to generation, the practices we are following in the Indian society are the Indian traditions, and these are modernizing. So according to Yogendra Singh, Indian traditions are modernizing according to its need, and it's just the combination of the modern features and the Indian traditions. It's not a replacement, or it's not completely modernization. It's Indian traditions are adapting to the modern values of the society. So that's what the Indian traditions are modernizing, and you have to explain using heterogeneous forces and orthogenic forces while discussing about the contributing factors for this what Indian traditions are modernizing. Heterogeneous factors are like from the external factors like the globalization, colonialism, or the westernization, etc. And orthogenetic factors are the Sanskritization or internal factors which are driving this the modernization of Indian traditions, this rationality of liberalization in the society, and etc. So educational factors, constitutionalism, green revolution, etc. all these things are helping the modernization of the Indian traditions. And next, third question, according to you, which social reform movement has played the most effective role in uplifting the status of women? Explain. So in this question there will be different types of answers. There is no single answer for this question, because UPSC will not judge you on the basis of your answer. UPSC, on the basis of which social reform movement you have chosen, but UPSC will judge you how you have analyzed that particular social reform movement in uplifting the status of women. So it's like you can write about Brahma Samaj, Brahma Samaj, because Brahma Samaj relentlessly worked for uplifting of women in various contexts, and for better example for this is abolition of sati in 1829. And apart from that, there are other social reform movements like Satyashodak Samaj, which worked for educating the women, and Arya Samaj, which also works for uplifting the women or equal status for the women in the society. So you can choose any social reform movement to write or for effective role in uplifting of women status in the society. So I would say, if I am writing answer in the exam, I would choose Brahma Samaj, because Brahma Samaj led a foundation for all social reform movements to work for uplifting of women. It started with the abolition of sati, which is most evil in the society, and it continued until the education system. Okay, it continued for the gender equality and employment for the women and widow remarriage, etc., etc. So it's an easy question, and here the condition is that what you are choosing is not the way for judging your answer, and how you have connected that particular social reform movement to the uplifting of status of women in Indian society. And next, how did colonial policies for the tribes for the tribes affected their socio-economic conditions in India? So colonial policies for the tribes. So if you know even little bit about the modern history, that British have introduced middleman into the tribal population. Money lenders have exploited the tribes, and they have also introduced Criminal Tribes Act in 1871. So with that, they have treated certain tribes as criminal tribes in the society. And in fact, that the same law is still haunting the many tribes of India. Still haunting the many tribes of India. They were always under surveillance because of the suspicion of their criminal activities. So British have tried to bring the people, the tribal population who have resisted for this population, they were brought into these criminal tribes. And apart from that, they have also introduced forest laws into Indian tribal population, and they have curtailed their indigenous powers about this, on the forest areas of the Indian society, and they were exploited to the core. So their socio-economic conditions in India were affected by the policies of the tribal population, be it forest policies and the Criminal Tribes Act, and then introduction of middleman into the tribal areas and money lenders and land revenue systems and surveillance on the tribal population has affected their socio-economic conditions. Here, their poverty still, they were haunted by the poverty. Still there, they were backward in almost all social indicators, be it health, be it education, be it employment opportunities, etc., etc. All the indicators of the tribal people are lagging behind because of the colonial policies which have badly impacted this tribal population. This is also a direct question, and here, you have to understand that how can you bring sociological perspective into it. That is what challenging here. You can write general studies answers, but how to bring sociological perspective into it. So you analyze always how did colonial policies for the tribes affected their socio-economic conditions. Means you should not write only the positive aspects of it, only negative aspects of it. You have to write positive aspects. That means here you are bringing functionalists, structural functionalists into it, and you can bring G.S. Gurye into it. You can also bring M.N. Srinivas into it, and you can bring A.R. Desai into it for a Marxist perspective, and you bring even certain the paper one thinkers like feminists and intersectionality like Kimberly Crenshaw, who argued that this tribal population or tribal women affected by tribal identity and also class identity and also gender identity. So like that, you bring how this, when you apply these colonial policies in understanding of the socio-economic conditions of the tribal population, you bring the perspectives in it, and that makes a good answer, that makes this answer a sociological answer and also good sociological answer. So with this question, I hope you understand how to bring perspectives, because I am just explaining the answer, but I am not telling you the thinker's name. So the most of the thinkers will be repeated in most of the answers, and you just bring the perspectives in understanding of the this a particular answer. Okay. And next, how would you appropriate? The next question is, how would you appropriate to characterize G.S. Gurye? How would you appropriate to characterize G.S. Gurye as a practitioner of theoretical pluralism? You know, many sociologists have criticized G.S. Gurye for that. For instance, Henri Bethe criticized G.S. Gurye as he is not stick to one theoretical understanding, and he applied multiple theories. For example, the theoretical pluralism here means he has shifted from indology to functionalism to field view. Okay, indology to functionalism to field view, and also based on the context, he has applied multiple perspectives in understanding of the Indian society. And you know that G.S. Gurye is the founding father of this Indian sociology, and this same G.S. Gurye has applied multiple theoretical understandings of the perspectives in understanding of the Indian society. So here, so how would you characterize means here G.S. Gurye has applied different perspectives in understanding of the Indian society. So theoretical pluralism, here he used indological perspective in understanding of the caste in India, and he used the functionalist perspective in understanding of the tribes, and he also used field view to understand the urban India, and the nation building process, etc., etc. So here it means the G.S. Gurye is not limited to one perspective, and he was actually the person who applied the theoretical pluralism in understanding of the Indian society. So if you write in terms of this, the caste and race in India, the village studies in India, and the tribal population in India, and he explained about religion in India, and different concepts or different institutions and different phenomena of the Indian society was explained using different theoretical perspective. That means theoretical pluralism. The G.S. Gurye can be called as, or G.S. Gurye can be characterized as a theoretical pluralism. Okay, and next, do you think that in a society like India, orthogenetic changes takes place through differentiation? Do you think that in a society like India, orthogenetic changes takes place through differentiation? Do you observe continuities in orthogenetic process? Elaborate your answer with a suitable example. So it seems when you look at this question in first instance, you feel difficult. But if you just try to remind yourself about orthogenetic changes, you can easily answer this question. So do you think that in a society like India, orthogenetic changes means the changes driven by internal process, changes driven by internal process takes place through differentiation? That means the changes brought by changing situations or changing conditions with respect to caste, with respect to religion, with respect to gender, with respect to the regional differences, with respect to constitution, with respect to colonialism in Indian society, you have to explain this particular answer. And do you observe continuities in orthogenetic process? Yes, there are continuities in orthogenetic process, like westernization in India, Sanskritization in India, and use the westernization in India, Sanskritization in India, the continuous processes, and in fact, and you can explain using the continuities in orthogenetic process through the law and education, which are changing the Indian caste system, our Indian religion, our Indian classes, and village and urbanization as a process. So all these things can be written in this particular answer. And the next, so agrarian class structure has been undergoing changes. Agrarian class structure has been undergoing changes due to modern forces. Critically examine. Agrarian class structure has been undergoing changes due to modern forces. So agrarian class structure, the traditional agrarian class structure is that, basically the dominant caste in India, or upper caste in India, are the dominant castes in India are the traditional peasants or the landowners of the Indian society, and there is the system called Jajmani system in the Indian society. So Jajmani system and the traditional the dominant castes are the peasants in the Indian society, and there are earlier the traditional agrarian class structure is driven by the classes in the Indian society, the Maliks and the Kamins in the Indian society. Most of the backward castes are generally agriculture, labor, and the dominant castes are the peasants, and the upper castes are basically the landlords or the jamindars in the Indian society. And agrarian class structure has been undergoing changes due to modern forces. Here modern forces like the mechanization, high yielding varieties through green revolution, land reforms, and after the LPG reforms, all these are modern forces, and constitutionalism and the abolition of intermediaries or jamindari abolition in India, all these are the modern forces. As mechanization is one of the major important aspect here, and technological innovations in agriculture, all these have changed the agrarian class structure in India, that it is no longer that only the dominant castes or the upper castes are owning the land in India, and there are lot of absentee landlordism in the Indian society. And you can also quote here Henri Bethes, the caste is turning into the class in the Sripuram village in the Tanjore of the Tamil Nadu. So here the Henri Bethe also argues that the majority of many of the lower castes are buying lands and they are changing their class status. So agrarian class structure has been undergoing changes, and here you can write or you can bring the perspectives into it. Like you can use Daniel Tarner or the Nagare, or you can also use Ombet and etc. These people are E.R. Desai in writing this answer, that the agrarian class structure, whether it is turning into the Marxist or the feudal set of agrarian class structure or capitalist mode of agrarian class structure. No, India is not completely a casteist, or India is not completely a feudal society, or it's a blend of mix of everything, and it depends on the different areas of the Indian society. Different states have different kinds of changes. It's not uniform across the India. In West Bengal, where communism has dominated, has undergone different agrarian class structure, and Kerala has undergone different agrarian class structure. Bihar, which is more a predominance of or having this feudalism, has undergone different social the agrarian class structure, and Punjab has undergone different agrarian class structure. So you can quote or you can use different thinkers to explain that agrarian class structure is not the changes in agrarian class structure are not uniform, but they are different. And next, so I hope you understand how you have to bring the perspectives in writing answer. There are, you can easily make a clear distinction between this general studies answers and the sociological answers. And next, how same-sex marriages are responsible for population dynamics in India. Discuss how same-sex marriages are responsible for population dynamics in India. It's a question mark. Question mark means, so here the population dynamics can be understood through birth rate or the fertility, fertility and death rate, birth rate or the fertility, death rate, and the migration patterns, and you can also bring the dynamics in terms of age composition, dynamics in terms of the gender composition, okay, dynamics in terms of gender composition, dynamics in terms of demographic dividend in the answer. So how the same-sex marriages, the same-sex marriages involves the LGBT community, LGBTQIA plus communities, the marrying within themselves, and you know that what happens when the same-sex marriage happens is that they are not capable of biologically produce the children. They are not capable of biologically produce the children, and how this incapability or how this a particular consequence of lack of this biological reproduction affects the birth rate and death rate and migration and the age composition, gender and the demographic dividend of this society. That means when you have, suppose if the same-sex marriages are not legalized in India, what happens if these are legalized in India? And though it is not also illegal in India, decriminalized, same-sex things are decriminalized, but there is no legality for same-sex marriages in India. So what happens if these things happens to this, when the same-sex marriages are happening or marriages increase in India, what happens to this birth rate, what happens to the death rate, what happens to this migration, age, gender and the demographic dividend of India? If you connect this thing to this, all the dynamics of the population dynamics, and you can easily write a good answer for this particular question. Next, what do you mean by nation building? What is the role of religion in nation building? So here, dynamism, and there is a chance for misunderstanding, there is a chance for misinterpretation of your answer, and sometimes there is also chance for going biased in understanding or in explaining this particular answer. So when you explain this particular answer, and it's my point here is that I suggest don't write this type of questions in the exam. The chances of getting good marks is very, very less because it affects your, generally it depends on the perspective you have chosen this here. So what do you mean by nation building? That means actually establishing a nation or a nation state is called generally nation building. So how this nation building happens in a society, because of the kind of, if you just remember the freedom movement in Indian society, or the freedom movement in the India, you can easily write a good answer. What is this nation building means? So nation building involves bringing consciousness among the people about a nation, bringing a consciousness among the people about the ethnic similarities of the society, or bringing a consciousness among the people that we are one community and we are one nation. So it means a nation building. That means the nation building involves a lot of people and a lot of processes and the laws and the many institutions are involved in this nation building process. So here the UPSC is asking, what is the role of religion in nation building? So religion plays an important role in the nation building, but you can write how religion plays an important role in nation building. For example, in the freedom movement itself, the Hindus and the Muslims, and especially the Muslims, after Muslim League, how religion has influenced this formation of Pakistan, and how religion has mobilized the Indian or Hindu people in the Indian society. And this mobilization of Hindu people in the freedom movement and mobilization of Muslims in the freedom movement has led to building our division of our establishment or partition of India into Pakistan and India. So here the religion has an important role in building a nation. Suppose the present government or the BJP has a target or objective of making India as a Hindu Rashtra. So religion is used as a tool for mobilization of the larger section of the Indian society. However, there are conflicting perspectives about this religion role in the nation building process. Yes, religion has integrative force according to Durkheim, and even Gandhi was appealed in terms of religion about this particular nation building process. And in fact, Giri also expressed his opinion about a religious role in building our nation building process. But however, there are conflicting views about this role. We have seen that the communalism in the society, and we can also observe from the religious states like Pakistan or Afghanistan or the Syria, where they have a state religions, or Myanmar, okay, where they have a state religions. So in those countries, the religion has almost caused a lot of problems to their nations. So religion has a functional role in the process of nation building, and religion also has the conflicting role in the process of nation building. The rise of communalism in the society, and the fundamentalism in the society, terrorism in the society, and the fighting among the different religious groups in the society, which has destroyed the secular fabrics of the countries, also happens because of the religion in the society. So there are different, what is the role of this religion has two perspectives, or the two ways, or you can use both, the both perspectives in writing an answer. But if you are balanced, and if you write a balanced answer, that's okay. But if you go wrong in balancing this answer, and lot of problems comes, and you may be treated with a different the ideologies. So that is how, it's better that you recluse from writing this answer. Next question: do you think that new economic reforms of British rule have disrupted the old economic system of India? Substantiate your answer with the suitable examples. So here, economic system of India, or old economic system of India, traditional economic system of India is subsistence economy, and dependent on rural economy or the village economy. And the old economic system of India is dependent on handlooms, handicrafts, and oil pressing. And in fact, the most of the products used across India, we have most of the products we used across India are generally handmade. Most of them are handmade, and the pottery in the Indian society. So all these are the old economic system of India. And these old economic system was disrupted by new economic reforms of British rule. And what happened with the introduction of this British rule? They have introduced land revenue policies in India. And they have dumped the machine-made synthetic or machine-made goods in India. They have introduced railways. They have introduced railways, and they have also introduced the modern industries into India. So because of this economic reforms introduced by the British economic policies, that this have replaced or deindustrialized the Indian society. So you have to write the impact of all these things on the subsistence nature of the Indian society, and the production process. Most of the production process is dependent on the village economy or the rural economy. And here the handlooms and the handicrafts and the oil pressing and the pottery and all this, in fact the smiths or the blacksmiths or the goldsmiths, etc., all these are produced from the rural areas. All these were sidelined and deindustrialized the Indian old economy of India. And this in old economy of India was disturbed and destabilized by this new economic reforms of the British rule in India. And next, describe the main features of Indian new middle class. How is it different from the old middle class? Describe the main features of Indian new middle class. How is it different from old middle class? This is very, very important question. This is very, very important question. Old middle class or the new middle class. So old middle class is generally associated with education, professionalism, like the doctors, engineers, teachers, lawyers, and all these people are generally old middle class, and they were part of regular employment structure of the Indian society. And they were also the middle or the land ownership class who have the better education and who have who are contributing factors for the Indian economy at once, and they were actually old middle class. And these old middle class were the active participants in politics. In fact, if you look at the Indian freedom movement, all the freedom fighters, or most of the freedom fighters, or majority of the freedom fighters belong to middle class. Gandhi is part of the middle class, Jawaharlal Nehru is a middle class, and Subhash Chandra Bose is part of the middle class. And most of the majority of the Indian freedom fighters are actually the part of the middle class. But when you look at the new middle class in the society, according to Leela Fernandez, you remember this name for the new middle class always. The Leela Fernandez, according to Leela Fernandez, this new middle class is associated with the consumption. New middle class is associated with the consumption, and new middle class is a phenomena started after liberalization, after LPG reforms after 1990s. So this new middle class is a phenomena happening after 1990s, and this new middle class is reluctant to accept the responsibilities according to some sociologists, in fact including Leela Fernandez. So what it means is that they are apolitical and they are economic conscious, but they are apolitical. They are not participating actively in the Indian society or Indian societal change. Most of the new middle class are self-driven and economic-driven or economic factors-driven people compared to the old middle class. So you can differentiate on the grounds that what is their new middle class, the basis of the middle class. We can differentiate on the basis of what is their target and the objective and their participation in the political system and the composition of the new middle class and the old middle class. Old middle class is generally composed by the upper or the forward communities of Indian society, and the new middle class is the mix of all communities of the Indian society. So old middle class is generally composed of dominant sections of the Indian society, and they were actually traditional upper caste and traditional forward communities in India. But in terms of this new middle class is composed by all sections of the Indian society, including backward castes of India, and they were consumption driven. So this is what makes it the unique or difference in the new middle class and the old middle class is that old middle class are generally the educated, old middle class are generally the professionals, but the new middle class are mostly consumption driven class of the society. What does this consumption driven means? We must be very clear about this consumption driven. Consumption driven means actually this new middle class is always worried about the branded products, or the new middle class are consuming different kinds of consumer goods, be it cars, be it having a good flat, the house, or a lifestyle. It's based on the lifestyle, life chances, and they focus more on the life chances in the market situations. So that is what the main features of the new middle class, and also it is different from old middle class. And next, who is said to be the pioneer of village studies in India? Illustratively describe contributions of some Indian sociologists on village studies, how their approaches are distinct from each other. Here the pioneer of village studies in India. Who is said to be the pioneer of village studies in India? We have the popular names like M.N. Srinivas is a pioneer of Indian village studies, and we have Henri Bethe is also the pioneer of Indian village studies. M.N. Srinivas studied Rampura village in Kurk, and the Henri Bethe studied Sripuram village in Tanjore, and we have S.C. Dubey, who has studied Shamirpet in Hyderabad. So these are the major sociological thinkers, are the pioneers of the village studies in India. And illustratively describe the contributions of some Indian sociologists on village studies. You have to describe what the Henri Bethe talked about in the village study of the Sripuram, and what M.N. Srinivas talked about in the process of, or in explaining the Rampura, like Sanskritization, westernization, as the processes happened in the Rampura village, and dominant caste also explained in the Rampura, from the study of Rampura village. And the Sripuram village, and you can explain using this the Trinitarian view of Henri Bethe, that is the class status and the power, or the class status and the party in the Sripuram study. And you can use, the S.C. Dubey study has shown that he has explained the village in using the holistic approach or integrative approach, that he sees that the different things are important in the society. So that is how you have to write this answer. And next, industrial class structure is the function of social structure of Indian society. Industrial class structure is a function of social structure of Indian society. What does it mean? Industrial class structure is a function of social structure of Indian society. So do you agree with this statement? Analyze. To some extent we can agree that industrial class structure is a function of social structure of Indian society. So it means the social structure of the Indian society is composed of industrial class structure, where certain classes of the Indian society are the owners, and certain classes of the Indian society are the laborers in the Indian society. Suppose you take the early introduction of the industries in India, most of the industrialists or the capitalists at the time are from the upper castes of India, and the most of the laborers are from the backward castes of India. So industrial class structure is a function of the social structure of India, which has driven the caste class nexus, and the caste is a primary source for the class or industrial class structure in India. And apart from that, because the question is that do you agree with this statement, and here the negative side or the secondary side of this is industrial class structure is not clear in the Indian society, because most of the industrial class structure is driven by the social structure of India, especially social structure of India is driven by the rural or agrarian society. Rural and agrarian, rural and agrarian. And apart from that, the caste structure is dominant in the Indian society. So negative side of it, that is, do you agree? That means the disagreement is also there, that the rural and agrarian and the caste structure is predominant in the Indian social structure, which is function for the Indian social structure, but not that there is no clear distinction of this industrial class structure as a function of the social structure of the Indian society. This is how you have to write this answer. And next, what is kinship? Kinship means any relationship by virtue of consanguinity, that is by blood, by virtue of affinity, that is by marriage, or by virtue of a social relationships, it is called kinship. and briefly explain the G.P. Murdoch's contribution to the study of kinship system. And G.P. Murdoch is a famous sociologist or social anthropologist who talked about this kinship system, and he has explained this kinship system after study of 250 societies of the world. He has explained this kinship system after study of 250 societies of the world, and he has clearly delineated the differences in terminology, and he has identified 6 kinship differences like Hawaiian, okay, and like Sudanese, etc. And these 6 the terminological similarities or terminologies or kinship terminologies, differences in kinship terminologies across these 250 societies. So he has explained. And apart from that, he has also explained that kinship system is the foundation for the society. Like the family is function for the society, and there is the functions of the family he has explained, functions of the marriage he has explained, and functions of this kinship system he has explained. That means the Murdoch's contribution is heavy in understanding of this kinship system. And in fact, the kinship understanding of the G.P. Murdoch has also influenced the Airavati Karve. Airavati Karve also was influenced by the G.P. Murdoch's contribution to the study of the kinship system. And in fact, it is not specific to Indian context. It is specific to, and it is actually in the context of the world kinship system. So it could have been asked in the paper 1, but UPSC has asked this question in the paper 2. So sometimes you have to write, beyond that Indian situation, but you bring Airavati Karve was also influenced by this, the G.P. Murdoch. You can also write this, because Airavati Karve also identified that kinship terminologies in all the north, south, east, west kinship systems in India. So that's how we have to write. The briefly explained Murdoch's contribution is that he has explained clearly explained the kinship terminologies in the society and the functions of this kinship system, and he also explained the functions of the family and the marriage in the kinship system. So after studying 250 societies in India. Okay, and next, section B. So here the challenge or the dynamics or dynamic questions comes. The most of this part C syllabus is covered in the section B of this paper 2. Part C of the paper 2 is covered in the section B of the syllabus. Section B of the paper 2 question paper. So here the transfer of land from cultivating to non-cultivating owners. The transfer of land from cultivating to non-cultivating owners is bringing about transformation in Indian society. Justify your answer by giving suitable illustrations. So, contrary to your understanding is that non-cultivating to cultivating has happened because of the Green Revolution or land reforms. But contrary to your understanding, the UPSC is asking that the transfer of land from cultivating to non-cultivating owners. And now, if you observe in the last 50 years, since around 1970s and 80s, the land is really transferring from cultivating to non-cultivating owners. In different parts of the Indian society, absentee landlordism is high. Different parts of the Indian society, absentee landlordism is high, that the peasants are once the owners or the cultivators of this land are become tenants and tenants to laborers. Here you can use Daniel Thorner's understanding that the peasants are becoming tenants and tenants to the laborers. That is the process happening in the Indian society. The cultivating to the non-cultivating. The land is transferring from cultivating to the non-cultivating. Here it's not just absentee landlordism, and there is a phenomena which is happening that most of the cultivated land is also going to the real estate builders, real estate business are the builders, and most of the cultivating land is turning into urban sprawl or part of this urban sprawl. And the cultivating land is used for the golf courses or farmhouses in the society. So that means the cultivating to non-cultivating owners is bringing transformational changes. That means once there are people, cultivators, and they are becoming tenants, and they're also becoming, in a later part, they're becoming agriculture laborers. And the people who have used that, the land, or the people who have used that, in a transformation of this cultivating land to the non-cultivating land or cultivating owners, this particular, there are sections of the people who are the traditional cultivators, and if these people have education and the good skills, and they are becoming employees, and that means the transformation is happening. A transformation in the Indian society is happening in terms of the class changes, in terms of the caste changes, in terms of the power dynamics changes, and in terms of how the caste is becoming class in caste, and caste in class. The nexus between this caste and class is also happening because of the transferring of this land from cultivating to non-cultivating owners. And you can also bring here Daniel Turner, and you can also bring the Gail Mombet here, and you can also bring the Danagare here. You can bring Andre Bette here from the Sripuram village context, where he talked about how the caste, the people, once the upper caste people are used to own the land, and now even lower caste people are buying land from these upper caste people because of the affirmative actions and because of the changes happening in the Indian society, and the employment opportunities are giving this power to the lower caste and the middle caste people in the society. So all transformation can be explained using these examples or the perspectives of the sociologist. And next, bring out various factors responsible for declining village industries in India. This is easy question. The various factors responsible for declining village industries in India. This is easy question. Factors responsible for declining of village industries in India. The major factors for declining village industries in India are colonialism in first place, and industrialization in the second place, urbanization in the society, and LPG reforms, that is globalization, liberalization in the society. And from a people perspective also, the perceptions of the society, the Western or pseudo-Westernism in the Indian society is also cause of declining these village industries, because we don't have preference for the village-made products or handlooms or handicrafts, and we have shifted our preferences for something Western or the branded products. That's how these factors like pseudo-Westernism, Westernization, colonialism, globalization, and LPG reforms in the society, or industrialization in the society, or IT revolution in the society has changed declining the village industries in the Indian society. Okay, direct and easy question. And next question is that discuss the social basis of political mobilization. Social basis of political mobilization in independent India. Has some change occurred in this during the last 60 years is a question mark. Here, what is this political mobilization means? Bringing different social groups into political participation. Is called political mobilization. And discuss the social basis of political mobilization. In independent India, that means after 1947, how these social bases are changing in the Indian society, and what are the different social bases, and has some change occurred during this last 60 to 70 years? Yes, changes have occurred, and the different social bases have been playing a different role, or a role for the political mobilization in the Indian society. Immediately after independence, a nationalism is a one social base, that is ethnic identity. The nationalism is a base for the political mobilization. And after that, there is the caste as a base for social mobilization. and there is a language as a basis for social mobilization. And you know that the most of the Tamilian politics are the Dravidian politics are based on the language as a base. And in fact, even in the Andhra Pradesh and the TDP or the Telugu Desham is also a language based mobilization of the Indian political mobilization of the people. And language as a base, caste as a base, nationalism as a base, and regionalism as a base, regionalism as a social base, regionalism as a social base, and we have tribal identities as a social base. Tribal identities are also social basis in the Indian society. Tribal identities are also social basis of Indian society. And the change occurred in the last 60 to 70 years. Yes, change has occurred. Now the predominant social base is religion. Caste and religion are playing a predominant role in the political mobilization, a social basis for the contemporary political mobilization. In the last 60 to 70 years, the shift and the continuously something is acting as a social base for the political mobilization in India. So the social bases are shifting from the nationalism, the caste, language, regionalism, tribal identity, religion, ethnic identity, etc. Okay, and next. What are the major problems faced by labor migrants? What are the major problems faced by labor migrants while working in informal sectors of Indian states? What are the major problems faced by labor migrants while working in informal sectors of the Indian states? And you know that the characteristics of informal sectors. Informal sectors are characterized by easy entry, easy exit, low levels of skills, and no regulation of working hours, no fixed wages. And in fact, this informal sector is also characterized by exploitation, and you can be removed or fired. You can also hire and fire. The hire and fire principles happen. Hire and fire principle dominates in this informal sector. The major problems faced by the labor migrants is that sometimes they were exploited. Like you can use here John Breman's the footloose labor. Most of these labor migrants can be called as a footloose labor, and these footloose labor are exploited in multiple ways. You take construction workers, or you take the bricklaying workers, or you take street vendors, or the people who are employed in these informal sectors like small industries in the Indian society. They were exploited by denying their wages. They're exploited by denying their holidays. They're exploited by denying the guarantee of the wages. And most of these wages are fluctuated. Most of these wages are based on the demand and the requirement in the society. So the labor migrants face problems in accessing education, problems in accessing healthcare, problems in accessing job guarantee, problems in avoiding the social security, problems in avoiding fixed salaries, problems in avoiding the multiple things. And here you bring the perspectives, like you can also bring the intersectionality of this Kimberly Crenshaw using intersectionality, where women labor migrants face more problem than the men migrants. You can also use this John Breman's footloose labor here, and you can bring other Marxists like A.R. Desai into context. And because of the exploitative class system developing in the Indian society, these people are the semi-feudal class. These people are exploiting the weaker sections of the society. Okay, so that's how you have to write the perspectives, and that's how you have to write sociological answer for this question. And next, do you think that law has been able to abolish child labor in India? Comment. Do you think that law has been able to abolish child labor in India? Comment. So we know that there are various laws to abolish child labor, and one particular law is directly targeting on child labor, that is Child Labor Prohibition Act. and which was amended in 2016, and with that amendment, the child labor was completely abolished between 6 years to 14 years, between 16 years to 14 years, completely abolished between 6 years to 14 years. And these people, 14 years, and the people are the 6 to 14 years can be employed only in the family enterprises and the entertainment industry. Other than these things, you cannot employ children in any of these industries. Once this particular the abolition of the child labor has certain limitations, but no limitations. Complete abolition of the child labor is the target according to the law. But do you think that law has been able to abolish child labor? And the comment means here you have to write your opinion. You have to write your opinion that according to 2011 census, there are around 10 million child labor in India. And according to National Family Health Survey, there are around 8 million child labor in India. That shows that law was unable to abolish this child labor. So here you can use the various perspectives or various thinkers in this context. Like Andrew Bethe says that law will not automatically removes abolition of this child labor. Law can only provide a base, but implementation is important. So without implementation, you cannot abolish the child labor in Indian society. And we have multiple laws to abolish this child labor indirectly also, like Right to Education Act. We have Right to Education Act is also there, but even with the Right to Education Act and this implementation, the bad implementation or inefficient implementation of these laws is still is leading to persistence of this child labor in India. So, however, this child labor has reduced in India. You can write that child labor has reduced but not abolished in India. Still more than 8 million, that means 80 lakh children are employed in various industries. Okay, sometimes even in hazardous industries they were employed. Okay, so the relentless work from lot of NGOs and all these people is also not leading to the complete abolition of this child labor in India. Okay, and you have to write your opinion. Next, in what respects have the constitutional provisions constitutional provisions change the socio-economic and political conditions of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in India? Critically examine. So in what respects have the constitutional provisions changed the socio-economic and political conditions? A lot of constitutional provisions are there for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. It starts with the Article 14, 15, 16, 17, the 21, 23, 24 and the 39, 40, 46 and 42 for the pensions and other things. And we have also the 243D and 243D, that is 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts, 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Acts, and we have 332, around 340, which talks about the scheduled National Commission for Scheduled Caste, National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, and the participation or the reservation or the representation facilities and the representation facilities in Lok Sabha and also the Lok Sabha and state assemblies, etc. So here, in what respects have the constitutional provisions changed the socio-economic and political aspects? Here, in terms of socio-economic, you can use the 39 article and 46 article and 44 article, okay, and in terms of in the 24 article, where the abolition of the bonded labor, abolition of the child labor, which has benefited it has benefited the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, because these people are predominantly represented in those sections, the bonded labor and the child labor, etc. So it has benefited it has benefited the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, these constitutional provisions. And we have Untouchability Prohibition Act, a Civil Rights Act, and we have also Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes, a Prevention of Atrocities Against Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes Act, and we have also Forest Rights Act, the legal the statutory provisions for the improving the position of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, and critically examine that to what extent these were able to change the position of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes socially, economically and politically. So there are a lot of proofs that still this scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, SCs and STs position is still lagging behind other communities of India. You take education, most illiterates are present in these two communities. You take economic condition, most poverty or majority of the poverty is present in these two communities. And you take employment, majority of the unemployees are in these two communities. And you take political participation or you take political representation in the society. I'll give you one example. According to Ashoka University study, whenever a scheduled caste, a scheduled tribe person is contesting from non-reserved constituency, nota votes are increasing. Whenever the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe person is contesting from non-reserved the constituency, they are actually, they are in that particular constituency, nota votes, that is none of the above votes are registering more. That means societal acceptance and the political participation and the political freedom is also lacking in this particular communities. That means critical aspects, however their position was improved, you have to write using these constitutional articles. Okay, because of the affirmative action or because of the reservation system in India, their position has improved in the Indian society. And next, discuss the trend of urbanization in India. Do you think that industrialization is the only precondition of urbanization? Give your argument. Here, discuss the trend of urbanization in India. This trend of urbanization is different in different phases of the Indian society. So, around or before, in the ancient society, in ancient Indian society, especially, we take after the Mahajanapadas, this urbanization has started after Mahajanapadas, and before that Mahajanapadas, we have urbanization in the Indus Valley civilization, and we know that Indus Valley civilization, and no need to write Indus Valley civilization here. Suppose the trend of urbanization in India, you take after Mahajanapadas, the first urbanization has happened using or through this, the dominance or predominance of educational institutions like Taxila. Taxila is an example. And after that, the urbanization has started with the emergence of the religious temples or the religious structures, the temples, the viharas, the chaityas, etc. Those become the urban areas, and after that the port cities become the urban areas, and the guilds and Strani areas, guilds and the Stranis are also acted as urban areas after that. So that means basically the trend of this urbanization, the before British and during British and after independence, you can write or you can divide this particular trend of urbanization in India. And during British, the new ways of urbanization has started, like there are the tea plantation areas, and there are the recreational areas like Mussoorie, the Mussoorie and the Darjeeling, etc. And the living spaces, these are acted as living spaces are for the British people. And next, after independence, we went for some planned urbanization with the kind of establishment of industries. With the establishment of industries like Bhilai, we have different the industrial cities across India. So, however, this is a trend. But after 1990s, there is a trend that new cities are emerging or new urban areas are emerging. These urban areas are are actually driven by the service sector. So do you think that industrialization is the only precondition of urbanization? So here in this particular context, you can write it is not a precondition, because we have seen that in the process of urbanization in India, most of the urban areas are driven by just migration, unplanned migration, and most of these urban areas are driven by especially educational centers or service-based centers, or services, or predominance of the services and the infrastructure facilities, not only because of the industrialization. So however, you have to write the two things, that industrialization is also a factor, but it's not the only precondition or the must precondition for urbanization in India. That is how you have to write this answer. And next, which measures would you suggest for which measures would you suggest for preventing caste conflicts in India? Justify your argument. Which measures would you suggest for preventing caste conflicts in India? Justify your argument. So here, caste conflicts in India are increasing because of, according to the Professor Surinder Jodka. So his argument is that the upper castes are resisting assertiveness of the lower castes. Upper castes are resisting assertiveness of the lower castes. The lower caste are the castes of India are certain the communities which are trying for uplifting their status, are asserting about their rights because of the modernity happening in India, and because of the affirmative action or the reservation systems in India. The assertiveness of the lower caste has led to the resistance from the upper caste, which is a leading cause for the friction between two different communities, and finally leading to conflicts in India, caste conflicts in India. And which measures would you suggest for preventing caste conflicts in India? That means here the measures are like promoting constitutional values in the society, and promoting the constitutionalism or constitutional morality in the society, education in the society, and at the same time the fast track courts in dealing with the caste issues in the society, The constitutionalism is very, very important here, and here you can also use the thinkers like the Ambedkar, B.R. Ambedkar's idea of annihilation of the caste, and you can also use the dominant caste as a political power, or politicization of the caste has to be reduced, because it's a new form of a casteism in the society. New forms of the casteism has to be reduced. Assertiveness is because the resistance is from the upper caste, and resistance is because assertiveness from the lower caste, and all this is because of the lack of education and awareness, and the lack of humanity, and lack of constitutional understanding or constitutional morality in the society. So what would you suggest means your suggestion should involve all these things. Next question is, what are the private and public network and supportive systems operative in Indian society for aged people? That means, according to UN Population Fund, our aged people is going to be at least around 20% of the Indian population by 2050. That means it's a growing trend, and it's a trend in the Indian society that the old age people are going to be increased by 2050. So now it is around 10% or 8 to 10%, and in the future by 2050 it is going to be more than 20% of the Indian society. So here the private and the public network. Here the private network means the family network, be it joint families, be it nuclear families, other supportive systems in the private, sometimes private old age homes, private family members, or the families like joint families or the nuclear families, etc. And the public network here means the public network here means NGO operated homes and the which are accessible for everyone, that is how the old age homes run by the public or the government or the institutions of the society, all these supportive systems operate in. What are the private and public network and supportive systems operate in Indian society means you have to write all these things: the joint family or the family network, and then the private old age homes, and the public network here means NGO operated or the government aided institutions which are looking after this, which are looking after the aged people. And supportive systems are, you can also write, the geriatric care institutions in the society can be written as a part of this first part of the syllabus, first part of the question. And suggest measures to cut down the challenges before caregivers. It's not challenges before aged people, challenges before caregivers. Challenges before caregivers, these people in the joint families, people in the nuclear families, and the people in the public networks or public networks like the old age homes, and the supportive systems like the people who are involved in the providing accessible India, the accessible India, that means providing supportive systems to these old age people. The challenges to these people is that generally the measures to cut down the challenges, that means what are the measures to reduce the challenges for the caregivers, that means the incentives have to be provided by the government, and policy for the old age, the policies which are actually the beneficial for the caregivers, these policies have to come up in the society. And in fact here the functionalists and some sociologists argument is that we have to develop the kind of social security for these old age people, and we should done away with the age old traditions of a complete dependence on the children or son meta preference. These kind of ideas have to be reduced, and these should be run on the basis of rationality and run on the basis of human capacities, and agency of these aged people should be developed so that the caregivers or the challenges before the caregivers can be reduced in the society. And next, educational development is the only panacea. Educational development is the only panacea for countries' all ills and evils. This is a statement, assertive statement from UPSC. Critically examine the above statement with reference to NEP, New Education Policy 2020. That means, everyone knows that education is a panacea for, that means a solution, the all-encompassing solution for a lot of problems, is ills and the evils of the society. Ills like, you take a lot of ills in the society, like the unemployment in the society, sati in the society, crimes in the society, rapes in the society. All these are ills and evils in the society. So education is important for removing all ills and evils in the society. And you have to analyze from the National Education Policy or New Education Policy 2020, and in that there are the provisions for or suggestions, the guidelines for the primary education and higher education. Using these guidelines, you connect how these guidelines are going to remove ills and evils in the society. Suppose I'll give you one hint, an example, like New Education Policy 2020 is suggested vocational education from 6th to 7th standard. That means this vocational education is going to remove the ills of the society, like unemployment in the society. And the primary universal primary education is one thing that because of the universal primary education, lot of evils in the society, like the uneducated, the rapes in the society, crimes in the society, delinquent behavior in the society can be reduced with the education using this New Education Policy. I have given a hint, and you have to write and you have to connect this, the the major features or the major suggestions given under this new education policy to how that those can remove these ills and evils in the society. However, in a critical part, you can bring certain sociologists here that the Marxist you can bring education is a tool used by the haves of the society to exploit the have-nots of the society, and this education is not going to help anyway, because this education, the ideals and ideology of this education is to make the people just the machines or the cogs or the clerks in the society, but not the empowered citizens of the society. And other critical also can be used that our education system is going just making the people as just the grade or certificate holders, but not the real educators in the society. That's how you have to write this answer. And next, how Dalit movements in India have facilitated their identity formation. Analyze how Dalit movements in India have facilitated their identity formation. Analyze. So Dalit movements in India, you can take Dalit movements in India from around 1800s to until now. Dalit movements can be categorized that the social reform movements acted as a Dalit movements. That means because most of the social reform movements have talked about Dalit upliftment in the society, and you can specifically target about Satyashodhak Samaj and SNDP Yogam from the Kerala, Satyashodhak Samaj by Jyotiba Phule, SNDP Yogam by Narayana Guru, and you can talk about Justice Party movement by the Periyar. And after the independence, you can talk about Dalit Panther movement, a BSP movement, and the Una incident happened in Gujarat. These are some Dalit movements, and how these Dalit movements in India have facilitated their identity formation means Dalit as an identity is nowadays they're proudly identifying with the Dalit, because the untouchable is a wrong word, untouchable is a negative word, and even Harijan is also there. They are rejecting the Harijan as a word, but they are more in terms of identifying with the Dalit, because Dalit means oppressed. So Dalit means oppressed, and Dalit is a Marathi word which was given by Jyotiba Phule, and later it was popularized by Ambedkar. Dalit here means the oppressed. Oppressed is the positive word, because their position in the society is not because of their inefficiencies. Position in the society is because they were oppressed for thousands of years. That's how Dalit was as an identity formation. The Dalit movements have given identity formation, and it has Dalit Panther movement, which was started in Maharashtra, has created the Dalit identity. And however, there is other sides of it, and the fragmentation in the Dalit identity, and the fragmentation in the Dalit identity, because these Dalits are not uniform across the India. There are different groups which are considered or called as Dalits in different states, and that is the reason for the fragmentation of this Dalits is leading for causing a problem for identity formation in India. That means you have to write two sides of it in this particular question. And next, is it possible? Next question is it possible to have sustainable development in India? Cite major environmental issues and suggest few measures to achieve sustainability. And it's an easy question that sustainable development in India is possible. Sustainable development across the world is possible, and it's just the major environmental issues have to be resolved, like conservation led by tribal population has to be encouraged, and the national park approach, and the wildlife sanctuaries have to be protected, and all these things you can write in a normal way, but you can bring a sociological perspective here using very relevant and the bringing tribal population into protection of this environment, and bringing women into protection of this environment, and bringing different social categories of the people who are actually living in consonance with this the forest areas or environmental sustainable practices, and using those things you can bring the sociological perspective into this particular answer. And next, it's important that sustainable development was given in both paper 1 and paper 2. That means sustainable development goals are going to be ended in 2030. So it is very important in the next years also. So you must focus on this particular question. And next question is, do you think that forced displacement of laborers has caused their deprivation and resultant inequalities during the recent past years. That means actually UPSC has asked this question the context of especially COVID-19 and the privatization of industries, and the mining activities, shutting down of some mining activities in the name of for the green energy, etc., etc. Certain things are closing down of certain factories and the laying off of the workers from different employment opportunities. So in the context of that, the forced displacement of laborers, and because of this forced displacement of labor, the deprivation, that is denying of opportunities or resources to these people, is happening and leading to inequalities in the recent society or recent years. This is also easy question, but you need to just understand that how you have to connect this forced displacement of laborers. So if you understand this concept, the forced displacement of laborers, you can easily write the answer. Okay, that's how you have to interpret this question. And next, what are the Indian government schemes launched for poverty alleviation after United Nations declaration of Sustainable Development Goals? If you look at Sustainable Development Goals, 3 questions were asked on the Sustainable Development Goals or sustainable development in India. So you have to concentrate on this. The government schemes, it's a direct, the easy question that you just need poverty alleviation schemes. You just need to elaborate poverty alleviation schemes connecting the Sustainable Development Goals of 2015. So it's a direct question, easy question. So if you understand this particular paper, the first section A, is from part A and part B of the paper 2 syllabus, and section B is from part C of the syllabus, and only part C is unconventional and part C is more dynamic, and the section A of the paper 2, and section A and B of the paper 1, all are mostly static in nature. Only section B of the paper 2 is dynamic in nature. So whatever the myths we have about the sociology should be done away with, and whatever the myths we have about the sociology are busted from this particular last 10 years UPSC pattern of giving these questions. Okay, so thank you, and I mean, you strategize your preparation according to this 2025 paper trend.